You honestly couldn't make this up. If there were an award for the most frustrating White House correspondent, many critics say Caitlin Collins might be a top contender. From frequent interruptions to what some describe as bad faith questions, she has often been accused by critics of acting more like an activist than a traditional journalist. Because of this tension, moments between Collins and the administration have repeatedly turned into sharp exchanges. During press briefings involving Donald Trump and his press team, pushback against her questions has become a regular highlight. And today we're looking at several moments where those exchanges became particularly intense.
Do you believe him?
Yeah, I do. I believe he wants peace. I believe that President Putin, when I spoke to him yesterday, I know him very well. Yeah, I think he wants peace. I think he would tell me if he didn't. I'd like to see peace.
Do you trust President
I
Putin?
believe that, I believe that he would like to see something happen. I trust him on this subject. I think he'd like to see something happen. I think it could have happened a long time ago. I think Biden, number one, it shouldn't have started, but it did. And now all those cities are knocked down like demolition sites. And this should have been done by Biden years ago. This should have never been allowed to happen. I know he's a friend of yours.
But couldn't Putin just withdraw his
He's a friend of
today?
CNN. That's why nobody watches CNN anymore.
One moment that critics frequently point to involves a question about whether Trump trusts Vladimir Putin. During the discussion, Collins followed up by asking directly, "Do you trust him?" Supporters of the administration argued that the question oversimplified a complicated diplomatic situation, especially considering that the topic involved sensitive international negotiations. In their view, such a question ignored the strategic nature of diplomacy, where leaders often avoid giving blunt personal judgments during ongoing negotiations.
He's going to come in here and be sworn in. Mitch McConnell has now voted against several of your nominees. He voted against RFK Jr. as the next health secretary, citing conspiracy theories. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I feel sorry for Mitch. And I was one of the people that he wanted to go to the end and he wanted to stay leader. He's not equipped mentally. He wasn't equipped 10 years ago mentally, in my opinion. He'd let the Republican Party go to hell. If I didn't come along, the Republican Party wouldn't even exist right now. Mitch McConnell never really had it. He had an ability to raise money because of his position as leader, which anybody could do. You could do it even. And that's saying a lot. But the fact is that he raised money and he gave a lot of money to senators. And so he had a little loyalty based on the fact that as leader, you could raise a lot of money. I was the one that got him to drop out of the leadership position.
Another political topic that entered the conversation involved Mitch McConnell and divisions within the Republican Party. Some commentators argue that figures like McConnell represent an older political establishment that struggled to energize new voters. They claim that when Trump entered politics, he reshaped the party by appealing directly to voters who felt ignored by traditional leadership. According to these critics, the tension between establishment Republicans and Trump's political movement reflects a broader shift inside the party.
The Oval Office and the diplomatic reception room last night.
Well, first of all, let me just set the record straight. It is a privilege to cover this White House. It's a privilege to be the White House press secretary. And nobody has the right to go into the Oval Office and ask the President of the United States questions. That's an invitation that is given. And there are hundreds of outlets on this campus, many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the President questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be.
The debate also touched on a dispute involving the Associated Press and access to White House briefings. The controversy emerged after disagreements related to terminology surrounding the Gulf of America naming debate. Some media organizations framed the situation as a press freedom issue connected to the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Others argued that similar disputes about press access had occurred under previous administrations as well, though they received far less media attention at the time.
It was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the geographical identification name server. And Apple has recognized that. Google has recognized that. Pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America. And it's very important to this administration that
Supporters of the administration often highlight the communication style of officials like J.D. Vance and Caroline Leavitt. They argue that both figures respond quickly and confidently to difficult questions during press briefings. In their view, this approach changes the dynamic between reporters and the administration, creating more direct exchanges rather than the traditional back-and-forth seen in past briefings.
It seems to be moving pretty quickly. How are you holding up?
It is insane. And I think everyone is kind of like readjusting and re-remembering what it was like 4 years ago, 4 years ago. I remember when Biden first took office in January, the New York Times wrote the story about how quiet the weekends were because for reporters, every weekend had just been like it was like a 7-day work week. And now we're back to that basically where it's just essentially nonstop every day. You kind of wake up like not knowing what you're going to be doing, what the schedule is. I was walking to get breakfast one day this week. I was like, okay, I'm going to have a nice little breakfast before I go to work. And halfway there, they're like, Trump's doing a press conference.
Finally, comparisons are often made between media access under different presidents. Critics of the previous administration point out that Joe Biden held fewer interviews with reporters during the early part of his presidency than both Donald Trump and Barack Obama did during the same period of their terms. Supporters argue that this difference meant fewer opportunities for direct questioning from the press. Others say it simply reflected a different communication strategy. Either way, the debate highlights how the relationship between the White House and the media continues to evolve with each administration.